I'm your host, Chloe, and welcome to Whispers of Southern Ohio, a podcast about the stories, spirits, and sacred traditions that still breathe in the hollows and hilltops of the Appalachian foothills. Today, we are going somewhere quiet, somewhere old, somewhere that smells like wood smoke and roots just pulled from the earth.
It's a real pleasure to be here, Chloe. I spend a lot of my time in the borderlands of history and folk practice, the places where everyday people made do with what the land gave them. And Southern Ohio is one of the richest places I've ever had the privilege to write about.
Our guest today is Mark H. Rowe, author, podcaster, and one of the most careful and respectful chroniclers of Appalachian folk tradition working today. His book, The Ohio Witches Field Guide, Plants, Roots, and Folk Ingredients of the Appalachian Foothills, is exactly what it sounds like and so much more. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chloe. The book came out of years of conversations with elders, with herbalists, with folks who still remember the names their grandmothers used for plants that grew right outside the back door. It's a love letter to a landscape that taught people how to heal.
In the Appalachian foothills of southern Ohio, healing was never simple. It wasn't just herbs and poultices. It was a matter of spirit, of intention, of relationship with a landscape that many believed was alive, listening, responding, offering what it chose to offer only to those who asked in the right way.
And many of the plants used for healing were also used for protection, for warding, for quiet workings meant to keep families safe from sickness, from misfortune, from things that didn't have names but were felt all the same. The line between healing and witchcraft in this tradition isn't a line at all. It's a doorway.
There were plants gathered at dawn because the spirit is awake then, the dew still on the leaves, the world still half in shadow, and something in the plant that wouldn't be there an hour later.
Roots dug only after speaking to the earth. Some practitioners would leave something behind, a pinch of tobacco, a few seeds, a word of gratitude spoken aloud. Materials carried in pockets, hung above doors, brewed into teas said to mend both body and soul. That's where we're going today.
Let's start with yarrow. In southern Ohio, yarrow grows everywhere, in the fields, along roadsides, in stubborn little clusters like it refuses to leave, and its reputation in folk medicine is just as persistent.
Yarrow has one of the longest healing histories in the Appalachian tradition. The Latin name goes back to Achilles using it to stanch battlefield wounds. That use carried forward. Yarrow was a first-call remedy for stopping bleeding. Pack a wound with it, crush the leaves and press them down. The science backs it up. But in southern Ohio, yarrow did something more. It sealed. Not just the wound on the body, but what healers called the wound on the spirit.
What do you mean by sealing the wound on the spirit?
When someone had been through something hard, a fright, a loss, a sickness that shook them, yarrow was used to close what had been opened, to help a person come back into themselves. They'd brew it into a tea, or bundle it near the sick person's bed. Emotional harm left a person open. Yarrow helped seal that.
That's such a different way of thinking about medicine. Not just, this plant treats this symptom, but this plant understands what happened to you and helps you close what was broken open.
That's the framework we carry through this whole conversation. Every plant we discuss has that dual nature, physical and spiritual, practical and symbolic. The body and the soul weren't separate systems. They were the same system, addressed together.
Let's talk about plantain leaf. And to be clear, this is not the banana. This is the broad-leafed ground plant that grows in lawns, driveways, sidewalk cracks.
Plantago major, one of the most overlooked healing plants in North America, and one of the most available. Topically, you'd crush a fresh leaf and press it against a sting or bite or swelling. It draws out, reduces inflammation. But plantain was also considered grounding. If someone was frightened, scared stiff, as the old folks said, plantain helped them bring them back down, back into their body. You might tuck a leaf in their shoe or have them hold one in their palm. The act itself was an anchor.
An anchor, the plant that grows where you step, becomes the thing that helps you stand again.
That's very Appalachian logic. The remedy is always near. The cure grows close to the wound. There's a teaching in that if you're willing to look for it.
Now, black walnut hull. This one carries a different energy, doesn't it?
Black walnut is one of those plants that earns your respect before it gives you anything. The hull stains everything it touches. You can't work with it carelessly. Medicinally, it's a powerful antifungal. The juglone compound was used as a wash for stubborn skin infections long before the chemistry was named. But black walnut hull was also prized for boundary work, strengthening the edges of a person, their household. Some practitioners buried holes at the four corners of their property. That bitter, staining quality was understood to transfer to whoever held it with intention.
So it builds walls, physical and invisible ones.
Exactly. And when you think about life in the Appalachian foothills, the isolation, the hardship, the sense that the world outside your hollow could swallow you whole, the need to strengthen your boundaries wasn't superstition, it was survival.
Wild ginger, tell me about its place in southern Ohio folk healing, because it seems to carry both a physical and an emotional role.
Wild ginger was used for stomach ailments, for nausea, for the gut trouble that comes with anxiety or grief as much as with what you ate. The healers understood that the stomach and the emotions were linked, a very old idea. And wild ginger was carried during travel as protection. If you were going somewhere unfamiliar, ginger in the pocket kept you anchored to home.
And red oak bark, which feels more austere to me, more enduring.
Red oak bark is medicine and symbol at once. You'd boil it into a wash for skin irritation and persistent rashes. It's astringent, it tightens and closes. Symbolically, the oak has always meant strength in folk tradition. A person bending under pressure might be given red oak bark as a reminder the roots can hold.
I want to spend real time on elderberry and elderflower. I think they may be the crown jewels of Appalachian healing in this region. Would you agree?
Elder was treated with a kind of reverence you don't often see extended to plants. There were old beliefs that the elder tree was inhabited by a spirit, the elder mother, and that you had to ask permission before cutting any part of it. Some practitioners would speak to the tree directly, express their need, wait in silence, and only then take what they needed.
That's remarkable. And medically, elderberry is having a real modern moment, but the folk tradition around it goes so much deeper than immune support.
So much deeper. The berries were used for immunity, elderberry syrup, cordial, wine, all with a medicinal function. The flowers were used for fever reduction, for cooling during illness. But elder was also central to spiritual cleansing. If someone had been through something that left them feeling contaminated, a death, a long illness, elder was used to clear that residue and help the living move forward.
And there's an ancestral dimension to elder as well, a connection to those who came before.
The berries were used for immunity, elderberry syrup, cordial, wine, all with a medicinal function during cold season. The flowers were used for fever reduction, for cooling during illness. But elder was also central to spiritual cleansing. After a death in the household, a long illness, elder cleared that residue and helped the living move forward.
Let's talk about the roots, sassafras and burdock, the things brewed into tonics, carried in pockets, stirred into the pot before winter comes.
Sassafras immediately conjures southern Ohio for me. That warm, slightly sweet, almost root beer quality is tied to memory and place. It was used in spring tonics. After a long winter, sassafras root bark was brewed to purify the blood, to clear what the cold months left behind. Spiritually, the same function, clearing the path, helping a person enter the new season renewed.
And burdock?
Burdock root is a deep cleanser, long, dark, earthy. It goes down into the ground before it gives itself up. Folk healers understood it exactly that way. Burdock went deep, worked slowly. It wasn't emergency medicine, it was a restorative. You used burdock when the problem had been building a long time, when something had accumulated in the body or the household. Burdock helped you dig it out.
Walk me through what gathering actually looked like in the southern Ohio tradition. The when, the how, the what you say.
Gathering was a ritual as much as a task. Dawn was considered the most potent time, that liminal hour when the world is neither night nor day, the dew still on the leaves, the plant's spirit most present. Moon phases mattered too, a waxing moon for medicines meant to build and strengthen, a waning moon for releasing and clearing, and always the spoken word, a prayer before taking from a plant, or simply speaking plainly to it, explaining your need, the acknowledgement that this plant had a life of its own, and you were entering into a relationship with it.
You write about how these practices carry layers of cultural influence: Scots-Irish, German, indigenous. How did those threads weave together in southern Ohio?
Southern Ohio's healing tradition is genuinely layered. The Scots-Irish settlers brought deep folk knowledge, herbal lore, charms, household practices passed from grandmother to granddaughter. German communities brought a more structured herbalism, and underneath everything were indigenous plant traditions, knowledge on this land for thousands of years before contact. What emerged wasn't a neat synthesis. People borrowed what worked, recognized something in the land's medicine that transcended cultural categories, and learned from it.
You also write about how the plants were understood to have character, personality almost. Some gentle, some fierce. Tell me about that.
Plants weren't passive in this tradition. They had character. Yarrow was the warrior herb, bold, courageous, strengthening. Elderflower was gentle and maternal. It soothed and held. Black walnut was stern, protective, but uncompromising. You matched the plant's character to the patient's need. And roots carried particular weight, anchors connecting the healer to the land's deep patience. When everything above ground seemed precarious, the roots held.
And where does witchcraft fit in? Because the book doesn't shy away from that word.
In southern Ohio's folk tradition, there was no clean line between healing and witchcraft. The granny woman who made your poultice was the same person who might hang a bundle above your door. These were not different systems. They were the same system. Restorative witchcraft is working done not for harm, but for mending, cleansing, and balance. Medicine with intention. In these communities, that was not only accepted, it was expected.
And how did these traditions survive? Never written down, never institutionalized? How did they persist?
They survived in the hollows, in kitchens and back porches and garden rows, where an older woman showed a younger one something and said, "Remember this." You didn't read about how to gather yarrow at dawn. You went with your grandmother at dawn, and you saw. And the knowing became part of you in a way no book can fully replicate, though I try.
I want to reflect for a moment because when I think about southern Ohio today, I see it happening. The herbal shops opening in small towns, the backyard gardens where people are growing elderberry and yarrow with intention, a quiet revival of folk healing culture. Do you see it too?
I do, and I think it's significant. There's a hunger for this knowledge, particularly among people who grew up in these hills and came back, or who never left, and always felt the land was trying to teach them. The revival isn't nostalgic, it's practical. People are looking for a relationship with their landscape that goes deeper than what modern life offers.
The Appalachian landscape itself seems to foster this knowing. The hills, the river valleys, the density of forest, the sense that the land is more than backdrop.
I do, and I think it's significant. There's a hunger for this knowledge, particularly among people who grew up in these hills and came back, or who never left, and always felt the land was trying to teach them. The revival isn't nostalgic, it's practical. People are looking for a relationship with their landscape that goes deeper than what modern life offers.
And the old remedies still show up, don't they? Elderberry syrup in the pantry, plantain salve in the medicine cabinet, walnut tinctures on the herbal shop shelf.
Southern Ohio has that quality in abundance. The hills close in around you. You feel you are inside something, not standing outside looking at it. That sense of being held by the landscape produced a healing tradition so intimate and relational. You don't disrespect something that holds you. You learn its language.
These traditions connect people to something beyond the individual, to ancestry, to community, to the long story of a place.
They do.
Each time someone reaches for that elderberry syrup, there's a thread connecting them back, even if they don't know it, to a granny woman gathering berry clusters before the first frost. The form changes, but the plant's work is the same, and the connection is still there. I believe it can be rekindled. That's partly why I wrote the book.
Mark, this has been one of the most beautiful and grounding conversations I've had on this show. The Ohio Witches Field Guide is exactly the book Southern Ohio deserves. Careful, respectful, deeply researched, and written with real love for this place and its people. Thank you for being here.
That's the deepest gift. When you brew sassafras root bark the way people have done in these hills for 200 years, you're doing more than making medicine. You're pulling on a thread that goes back through all the hands that touched it before yours. That sense of continuity, of belonging to something older than yourself, is what no modern supplement can replicate.